it may be a sensitive topic for some viewers. So I highly recommend making sure that anyone within earshot that could be triggered by this is out of the way of this video. When you think of professions like police, firemen, military, you think of it can be dangerous. But what if I told you that my desk job was equally dangerous because of a psychotic coworker I used to have to deal with? This is the story of what happened to me at my job. I think you're going to see more and more of this type of behavior in the workplace going forward. I started working at my job. It began as an assistant position. I worked specifically for one main person, but I also helped throughout the whole office. My daily job duties included a lot of paperwork, a lot of reports, things of that nature for this main person. I was really efficient at that job, and I quickly earned a nickname of Facilitator of Awesomeness because of how that person was able to grow in their position very quickly. He was bringing in about $1 million to the company, and when I became his assistant, he quickly doubled that to $2 million. I'm not here to take credit for that. I did my job well. That's the bottom line. Our department was under supervision of a director in the corporation, and he wasn't even in the same state that we were. He was in a totally different state. So he supervised from phones, computers, internet, Zoom calls. He didn't really come down much and see us. Perhaps he came once a year, twice a year, but we didn't really see him often. You would never hear from this person until you had a problem with something. And then he would come in physically to our location and talk with us. Every workplace has drama. That's not a secret. And this man, this director in the corporation, got tangled up with some drama. It had nothing to do with my department, my office, nothing like that. It was completely separate. Shortly after the drama, the company's president had a stroke. When the president had a stroke, his son became in charge of the company. The original owner who had a stroke, he was elderly. I really liked working for the company when he was in charge. He was old school. He did things like passed out a gift card and a coupon for a free turkey at Thanksgiving to all the employees. And I thought that was, very generous of this person. He didn't have to do that. And I was very grateful for that extra little step he took. He signed every single person's note card that he sent out with the gift cards and the coupons. And he would take the time to say how much he appreciated us. And for that, I appreciated him back. I thought that was really nice gesture towards his employees. And I had no problem with him at all. The original owner never came back to the business after his stroke. I never heard from him again. I realized after this person took over the business, things were never going to be the same. Things were changing. Corporate mentality set in. People in corporate were rewarded, and the workers, everyone else, was treated like disposable people. We were just one big batch of disposables, except for people in the corporate world. Anybody in their corporate world was treated very generously. And let me just explain that. I had to go to corporate offices one time, and they were having a catered lunch in a conference room. I saw a 4-course meal set out in front of everybody. They had the bottles of wine. They had the candlelight. And that's okay. I'm not dissing anybody for enjoying a company luncheon. However, they were also having a training down the hall in a different conference room for new hires. Well, that conference room where the new hires were in was disgusting. And for the new hires, they had set out a few different pieces of bread in a basket. They had a deli tray, which had some sliced meat and cheese. I didn't see any condiments. And then there was like a little tiny bin of water, not even on ice, just warm water. And there had been like a fruit basket, but there wasn't enough fruit for all the new hires, so it ran out very quickly. And in contrast to this nice corporate luncheon, it just sets the stage for how this company thought of the corporate employees as being so great, and the little guys that were doing the day-to-day mundane tasks, you know, it just showed right there what they thought of them. And the prior owner would never have treated his employees like this. I was thankful to have a job. I didn't really care about who got a better lunch. I really just tried to go in every day and do my job to my best ability. After a while, once I saw subtle changes in the corporate world, and I saw how employees on the lower ladder rungs were being treated, including myself, we were introduced to a couple of new hires. These new hires were going to be running our department from a different state. They didn't live or work in my state. They were going to oversee, I think it was 6 or 7 states worth of employees in our day-to-day tasks. Both of these employees were hired from a company that had just fired them. Let me repeat that for you. Both of these employees were hired from a company that just fired them. Now, this is a matter of public record. These two people were fired from their previous companies because they didn't do a good job. That's all in public record. One of the employees went on to sue that employer, but just know that there are multiple public articles about this woman online. And basically, the company that fired her came right out and said she did a terrible job. Apparently, she had a meeting and they fired her. They said, "You're not doing a good job. You're fired. You didn't do what we hired you to do." She turned around and sued them for harassment. When she was hired at my company, she brought with her the other person that was fired. The person that she brought with her had a history of getting fired where he worked. That's a fact. He has probably worked about 25 different jobs. He worked a different job about every couple of years. Because of this, he knows a lot of people in my area, even though he's not from my area. The people in my area cannot stand this guy. He's not nice. He's not kind. He has a very vicious streak. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked with anybody like this. I don't even like talking about people like this, but I feel like it's necessary to drive my point home in this video. If you find yourself in a position working for people like this, please leave. Get the heck out of there as fast as you can, because people like this will take every opportunity to drag you through the mud, beat you down, because that's their game. Because he's not a professional, but yet he still gets employed. You may run across somebody like this. You may run across him next time he's fired and is out in the workforce. So after a while, this man came to me. Now, I had been working at the company for a couple of years. Like I said, everybody was happy with the work I was doing. My direct manager, he was just absolutely head over heels about the job I did for the company, as well as people above him. His manager, the manager above him, and so forth. There was nobody in this company that had a problem with me or a problem with what I was doing. They all thought I had a tremendous workload and that I was handling it well, that I helped the company succeed, that I helped my coworkers succeed. They all thought I was a hardworking individual. There was no question about that. This man came to meet with me, and he decided he no longer needed me in the job I was doing. Mind you, I had multiple levels of management praising me daily. And then this guy comes along and decides he doesn't want me to do what I was doing anymore. That just establishes a base there. Like, you can see where this is going already. When I asked him Why? Because it was working out very well. My coworker grew the company by $1 million with my help. Why on earth would he want to end my job? He basically gave me an ultimatum and told me that I could either go to a different town, which was about 20 minutes away, and work in an office that was cruddy. It was right in the middle of a really bad high crime area. The office was disgusting, dilapidated. The building was old, but they had never put any money into it to like upgrade it or make it nicer. He said I could go there every day and do what he wanted me to do, and I would be alone. Or I could go home and work from home. He said if I didn't want to do that, I would have to go through job training and do what my coworker did. It's a very high stress, high pressure job, and it is commission based. They do pay a base salary. I know people working at Dunkin' Donuts that make more than I made working in this position. I told him, look, I don't want to do that job. I liked being the assistant. This was working out well. My coworker had progressed, advanced, and doubled the money he was bringing in for the company. I didn't want that kind of pressure. I'm still raising children at this point. I want to go home at night and not have to be worried about all this other stuff that my coworker had to worry about. I just wanted to be the assistant. When I was the assistant, I had Wednesday afternoons off and I had Saturday afternoons off. But I did work Monday, Tuesday, full-time, Thursday, Friday, full-time. And then the business was closed on Sunday. When I was the assistant, I answered phones, I did marketing, I sent out mailers for my coworker, and I basically drove business into the company for my coworker to be able to make that $2 million goal. That had exceeded any measurement they had given my coworker. They were surprised he did 2 million because their goal for him was 1.5. When I tried to plead with this man and explain to him, look, I like my job. I'm really good at my job. These are the things I implemented to help my coworker maximize his job and get to the $2 million goal. I tried explaining what I did. The woman that brought him into the company was a marketing major. I never saw any evidence that she did any marketing for my company, but that was what her major was in college. So he threw that in my face. We don't need you to do that. We have her to do that. I said, well, I don't understand. I mean, it's been like this. This is how I've been doing my job. So now you're telling me you don't want me in this job anymore, basically. And he said, no, we don't. We're eliminating the job. So you either do what your coworker does or you go, in this other area and work there by yourself. I had no one to back me up. I went to my immediate manager and I explained to him, hey, I feel like I'm getting shafted here. What is going on exactly? And he explained that he had no say in this at all. These orders came directly from corporate. And my coworker felt bad. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to do my job without you. This has been the best decision the company has ever made. He said he never dreamed that an assistant could take him to a $2 million goal. He never would have had time to do anything I did. He wouldn't have had time to do it himself. He was very grateful and appreciative of the work I had done. My direct manager said that he was very sorry. He talked to people above him. He talked to people in corporate. He went to a manager's meeting in corporate and addressed it. And the company was changing. This new guy who took over the whole company was younger, and he had young-minded mentality, and he was not into the old school way of doing business. I either had to do what my coworker was doing or go to this other building or quit or be fired. And that was it. So I had to go into a meeting, and it was with my manager and this other guy. We sat in the meeting and the other guy said, you have a 6-month probationary period. And while you're in this probationary period, you have a goal to hit of $25,000 a month that you're bringing in the company. And if you don't do that, you will be fired in 6 months. So here I had lost the job I was doing, which I was excelling at. I had no experience in this arena. This was outside of my comfort zone. I didn't want to do this, but I had kids to feed. I told him that I guess I would try it. But it was very disheartening that I could lose my job in 6 months if I didn't perform to their standards. At this time, the coworker that I had helped progress to his $2 million goal, he went to the manager and said, well, this isn't really fair because I'm not sharing my pot here. I'm not sharing it. I've earned this. And yeah, she helped me get there, but I'm not sharing it with her. She's going to have to find her own clients. My manager understood that very well and said, yeah, she'll have to make her own way. So that intimidated me a lot because I had experience in marketing, but all of the marketing efforts I had done over the past couple of years to this point was for my coworker. I had postcards made up for him. I had mailers sent out for him. The woman that they had hired came down to my office to talk to me. She came to me and said that she had a lot of marketing in her background. She went to college for it. And anything we needed, she would help. She would help with the marketing. I wouldn't have to do the marketing anymore. So I asked her what her plan was because I know I was doing these things that worked. What was her plan to do the marketing? And she basically said there was a way on the internet where if somebody searches for your company, but they also search for a competitor, she said she could zone them so that they wouldn't click on the competitor and they would only click on us. Like say you have 2 banks, right? You have North Bank and South Bank, and customers are going on Google and they're searching for North Bank. But we're South Bank, say, hypothetically. She would zone them online so that they wouldn't click on North Bank, they would click on South Bank. So I said, well, what about the postcards and the mailers and all that? And she said, no, we're not doing that anymore. That costs postage and we're not paying it. We're going to do it my way. And I said, okay, well, this way works though. It's tried and true. It's old school. It works. We know it works because my coworker grew from 1 million to 2 million. So we know that works. So you're going to sit here and switch it up and then I'm not going to be able to do it for myself. So now what? And she said, no, this is the only way to do it now. Everybody's doing this. We have to make sure that our competitors aren't seen online. I also explained to her that we were missing out on a big chunk of geography because people 2 towns over that are in a really wealthy area, you have a lot of lawyers, doctors, nurses, people with higher incomes. They were utilizing the services of another company. And I said it would be really wonderful if you could zone them somehow and get them here. Now, for example, say this area was Smithtown. Why don't you email me that? When I get back to the office, I can review it and show everybody, and then we can zone them as well. But when she got back to the office, she didn't do that. A year later, she ended up telling me that she was going to zone Milltown. But my email to her even had a map. It had statistical data and it had a map about Smithtown, and she didn't even get that right. She wrote back to me and said, we're zoning Milltown, which had nothing to do with anything. After a while, I realized that neither of these 2 people that were fired from their previous jobs, they weren't helping me get clients. They weren't helping me zone clients from the internet, whatever that's supposed to mean. They weren't doing anything like that. This company has multiple locations. All the employees that were doing the commission-based work had quotas. It became a tremendous effort to try to gain any clients. I was struggling to get any new faces into the building, and I didn't have any new clients. The business I was bringing into the company grew from $25,000 a month to almost $80,000 a month. It still wasn't as good as some of the other employees, but there were a lot of factors to consider. The first off being, I was with this coworker who was top of his game. I helped establish his clientele the first couple of years I worked there. People in the other offices, they were alone, so they had all of the clientele for that area to themselves. After a while, when I was doing about 50 to 60 a month, the man came to me and said, "We need to evaluate your performance." I asked him if I was doing something wrong, and he said, "No, but you're just not doing enough." So I explained to him, well, how am I supposed to do more? The person with me, he's established. I'm not. At this point, I had been doing this for about 1.5, maybe 2 years. I said, he's established. I'm not. So how am I supposed to get up to his level? And he said that he expected me to do more and he would be firing me if I didn't. Again, I went to my manager, and this time my manager dropped a shocking bombshell. He was retiring. Once I found out my manager was retiring, I didn't know if I was going to stay at the company. I had nobody to back me up. I felt like I was in the middle of the ocean on a rowboat. Pepper is photobombing my photo shoot again. Hi, Pepper. She's so silly. Hi, Pepper. She's my 17-year-old cat. Hi. What are you doing? Just hanging out? Once my manager retired, he appointed a man that was working in our company. He didn't have any managerial experience, but he was the top choice for my manager when he retired. So he retired. The new manager felt the same way I did about the two people that were hired in corporate. Like, nobody in the company could understand why these two people were ever hired. The company was growing, so that's all the owner cared about. It really bring down morale. In fact, many of the old timers left because of these two individuals. About a year and a half before I left, they had a sweep in the company and let go of my ex-manager, as well as about 100 original employees to the company. These were all people that had put between 30 and 50 years into the company. Most of them were elderly. I remember one man was about 80-something years old, and he did a little report every day that I found very helpful. He would send it out to everybody's emails, and they even let him go. They just went and swept the company, just took them all out. But at the same time, they were hiring. And the people they were hiring, Pepper is playing with the spots from my shirt, and they're blinging around the room, and Pepper's chasing them. They were hiring people that were much younger. I would say in their 20s. People with no experience, people that were fresh out of high school even. They were hiring, and they were putting them in managerial roles, and they became corporate heavy. Most of the people they hired went right to the corporate level, and they started opening new branches and putting 20-year-olds in management. This was due to the owner plus the two people that he hired that were fired from the other company. Time was up for me, and they gave me another ultimatum. The man came down again and said, "You are going to be fired, or you need to pick up your pace and bring more money into the company." There was nothing else I could do. We had a little slowdown. I wasn't getting much business. I was doing everything I could. My coworker, because he had been there for so long in the company, and also because he was a top performer in the company, he was able to generate business just from leads. He was able to generate business word of mouth. I wasn't established for that. In fact, most of the people that came to this company, they knew me as his assistant. I did not get the same respect as he did. And they knew me as his assistant. They kept thinking I was going to do the tasks that an assistant does, like answer phones, copy paperwork, things like that. They didn't try to help me get more business. They would bring all the business to him because he was established. That's not a bad thing. That's just how it is. It was out of my reach to get more business being in that branch because he ran the show. I was in a commission-based role, and my coworker was the top performer in the whole company. My coworker was established. He worked very hard. Why should I be able to share in his success? Granted, when I was his assistant, I did bring him clients and I helped him get more established and I helped him reach 2 million. But I can understand the way he felt. An opportunity came up at a different branch. Eventually, the company decided to promote a contest to the highest performer in the month. Naturally, one would assume that the people performing the highest in the company would automatically win, but that wasn't the case. They switched it up a little bit, so it was like really harder, and it was anybody's game. Anybody could win this contest. I had met with some new clients, and they were looking into some things that would have brought the company about $70,000. I was very excited from this opportunity because I never dreamed I would have had a chance to win a contest. I don't like contests. I didn't even want to be in a contest, but it wasn't up to us. It wasn't our choice. They literally said, you're in a contest whether you like it or not. That's it. Well, I had this possible client, and it was $70,000 client. I met with them multiple times. Likewise, I had 2 other clients that came in unexpectedly, and I met with them. Now I'm up to about $150,000 in business for the company. All 3 clients met with me multiple times. I talked with them on the phone. I was very good at following up. I called them after they left and said, hey, are you ready to finalize this? Are we going to go forward with this? To my surprise, the first client said she had already met with somebody else in another branch. So I said, oh, well, didn't you tell her you're working with me? Because we're all the same company here. And we're not allowed to step on each other's toes like that. If you're working with me and I've given you paperwork, you can't just go to somebody else and they write it up and finalize it without keeping it in my name. And this customer said that the other person they spoke to in the other branch told them it's all the same company and it doesn't matter who finalizes it. It still all goes to the company. And I said, well, that's okay. So that is true. However, I'm the original writer. I'm the one that should be given credit for this transaction. This was a $70,000 transaction. $50,000 of that was eligible for the contest. I looked at my coworker and said, you're not going to believe what happened. He's like, that's really messed up. That same day, a woman came in who I had previously met with, and she said, oh, I just want you to go over this with me. And I thought it was the paperwork I had given her, and she had my paperwork, but it was written up and finalized by the same other woman in the other branch. So I looked at her and I said, did you go out to this woman in this other branch? She said, yes. And I said, why did you do that? She goes, well, I live there, and the day I came to see you, she wasn't open. She had a sign on the door that said she was closed. So that's the only reason I came here. I said, but I wrote up the paperwork. She goes, no, I know you wrote up the paperwork, but it was convenient for me to go there. And she said it didn't matter. So that was number 2 that said this to me. This was $20,000 that was eligible for the contest. We're up to $70,000 that's eligible for the contest. We're up to $90,000 in business for the company that was taken out of my name and put into this woman's name. I was ready to fire off an email to my higher ups and my manager to explain to them, hey, what is going on here, when a third client came in. This third client came up to me and said she had a problem with the woman in this other branch who wrote up the final documents, and there were mistakes. And I said, well, again, why did you go to this other woman in this other branch? I don't understand. Does she have a sign on the internet that says, don't go to see her, come to see me? Because I'm really confused at this point. It's just very confusing. She goes, well, she called me and said for me to go in, that she saw that I was interested. And I said, oh, she called you. She reached out to you from my prospects. She reached out to you. So basically what she was doing was stealing my clients. I said, okay, thank you for letting me know, but I can't fix this error for you. She has to fix it on her end because I didn't do it in my computer system. You have to go back to her and get it taken care of. Basically, the woman didn't know what she was doing. She was only doing this to win this contest. And she would do anything to win this trip, even if it included stealing my clients and my business that I had brought in for the company. That was enough for me. I wrote an email. I sent it to the 2 people that were fired but hired, those 2. I sent it to my direct manager. I sent it to my coworker. And I also sent it to the 2 people that were higher up than my manager. And I explained to them that this woman was stealing my customers and she was only doing it to win the contest, and it wasn't ethical what she was doing. I'm being told I'm going to be fired if I don't step on my game. I'm stepping up my game, and she's stealing it right out from underneath me. The 2 people that were fired and hired, they explained to me that they didn't think this person was capable of that. They said this person was really super nice, and they couldn't perceive that she would do anything like that. And I must be mistaken. I said, no, don't give me that. No, I have proof. If you look in the computer system, everything is date stamped and time stamped. I have proof. The first client that came to see me had come to see me weeks before she ever went to this other branch. And the other 2 had been working with me multiple times. I spent about 5 hours on the second client. No, this was done deliberately. The woman in the other branch won the contest. She got her name recognized in a newspaper, and the newspaper went on to name the company I worked for as Company of the Year in the location where the corporate offices were situated. Finally, after that, this other person came to me and said that they had worked with me, but they went out to see her, and this was a $10,000 transaction. And that when they went to see her, she wrote up all the paperwork and said, there's no need to come back to see me, that she would take care of it. And I said, okay, that's it. I've had it. I've had enough. I went right to my manager and I said, this is what's going on. This is what happened. My manager went higher up to somebody else in the company, and that person came to me and said, I understand what you're saying. I went to talk to her, but she quit. And I said, did she quit because of me? He said, I don't think so, but somebody else called her out for something else, so she quit. I think she wanted to save face. About a year and a half later, I learned that there was another branch that was opening, a brand new branch, and the person they had put there to work in it had a problem with a client, and he was terminated. I reached out to the 2 people that were fired and hired, and I said, I'm never going to grow in this company unless I am in my own branch. Is it possible that I could work in that branch? My manager said, you are a fool. You're making a big mistake. You should not leave here. And you're making a big mistake by going to that other branch. He said, but if they do hire you for the position, make sure you ask for a mileage stipend because it was going to be a 45-minute commute each way. The 2 higher ups, they made a decision and came back to me and they said, we love it. Yes, we want you to run that branch. I was told by the guy that I would be in charge of that branch. It was my branch that I was being promoted. But because they figured I would be making more in commission because I would be making progress and bringing in more money for the company, that they weren't going to give me a stipend for gas, that the commission I made would more than enough make up for it. My manager said, don't do it. Don't take the job. I didn't listen. I took the job anyway. The branch was sparsely furnished. The employee that left, he only had a very small desk with a 3-drawer cabinet and nothing else. I asked if I was able to bring in a file cabinet or a bookcase, and I was told no. The branch I was leaving, though, however, I could do whatever I wanted, so it was confusing to me why I wasn't allowed to bring any office furniture to this new branch. The man came down again to meet with me. He told me that they had hired a woman to work in the branch so that I could have a day off, because I had been working Monday through Saturday, and this woman would be working there on Mondays, so I'd have Monday off. And I said, well, I don't really want a day off. I want to work Monday through Saturday. And he said, well, you're not allowed. We're not going to let you do that. I said, well, you didn't have a problem with it when I was doing it in this branch. And he said, well, you're not going to do that here. She's going to work here on Monday. When I asked who the woman was, he told me, and it was the woman who had been stealing my clients. I was shocked. I had already put my notice in for my last branch. Here I am moving to this other branch 45 minutes away. I'm not going to be making any more money for a while until I'm established there. And now I'm told that the thief that used to work with me is now working at this branch on Mondays. I said, oh, no, I didn't agree to this. I said, I'm sorry, but she is a thief and she's unethical and she shouldn't be working here. Why was she hired back? And he glorified her. Oh, well, she's a wonderful person. I said, no, she isn't. She was stealing clients. That's not a wonderful person. She did it in the name of winning contests, for crying out loud. She wasn't on her own merit. She was unethical. I said, I don't want to work in this branch with her. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it. Then I'll go back to the other branch. He's like, then you'll be fired. We're not going to tolerate that. So I had no choice. My first day there was a box laying by the sparsely furnished office, and it had a small bookcase in it. Not a bookcase I picked, just a generic bookcase. I had a bunch of resource books with me and everything, and I started putting out all my resource books. The man came down to meet with me. He looked at me and he said he was very concerned for me, and he didn't know if this was going to work out, and he wasn't sure he made the right decision. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, I'm not sure we put the right person in here. And I said, well, that's a very unfair statement. Mind you, I had grown my coworker to 2 million, doubling his potential. I came into this job with no experience. I was forced to make a choice. I was given an ultimatum. No one else in the company was. I was the only one. I was told, you do this or this or you're out of here. Now this same guy is telling me he's not even sure he made the right decision by putting me in my own branch. I said, I don't understand. You could say that to me. I have shown productivity. I have shown growth. I have showed that I'm a team player. I called this one woman out for being a thief. And now you're like trying to put the screws to me. The next day was my second day in my new branch. I was setting up my space, and the woman came in. She was very cordial. She greeted me. I greeted her back. We were very kind to each other. And she informed me that she would be setting up her office, and she would be utilizing the desk space, which left me with no drawers to use for my work. And in addition, because I had my resource books set up on the bookcase, she would be using duplicate books that wasn't necessary. She could have shared mine. She was going to be putting those on the windowsill. She went into my drawer bank, the 3 little drawers that I had them all set up, washed out, and organized. And she started shoving stuff in there, shoving as tightly as she could, just packing it through with garbage. her little drink pouches, things that she plucked out of a garbage can from a different branch. It was bizarre. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I'm fixing up my desk." I said, "This is my desk. You're here temporarily on Mondays so I can have a day off. That's my understanding." She goes, No. I don't know what you were told, but I'm your competition. I will be working here on Mondays, and I will be making sure to make more than you when I'm working here." I was floored. I looked at her, I said, What are you talking about? What do you mean you're my competition? She goes, "I was hired to be your competition." I was sickened. If they didn't really want me there, then just say it. I didn't need all this drama. I didn't need this stress. Now I'm commuting 45 minutes away to a job I can't stand. I can't stand the thought of this woman terrorizing me. I can't stand the thought of this woman stealing my clients again. It's not fair. Nobody should have to go to work every day living in this type of fear or living in this type of stress. Nobody should. So I got right up on the computer and I fired off an email to the district manager. He is one step above of the branch manager. And I fired off an email to him. He's known me for years. I said, "This is what just happened and I'm not comfortable with this. I wouldn't have agreed to commute if I knew this was going to happen. I didn't realize that she was going to be my competition. I thought she was going to just work here on Mondays so I could get a day off." He wrote back and said, "I wasn't aware of that either. I'm going to talk to higher ups and see what's going on." And he made it sound like he was on my team. He was on my side. He was pulling for me. That's the way he made it sound. He knew my work ethic. He knew I was a hard worker. He knew I was a good worker. And I thought at that moment that he was going to bat for me. 2 weeks went by and I escalated my complaint to the CEO of the company. This CEO had been there the day I was hired. He knew me. He talked with me. He knew I was a hardworking employee. And yet when I told him what I was going through with this woman who was continuing to steal my clients, I had a $30,000 client. She took a phone call on a Monday and wrote up my job. And then proceeded to tell the two people that were fired and hired, proceeded to tell them that they wanted to work with her instead. I had someone at my prior branch recommend a friend to me, but they came on a Monday when I wasn't there, and she didn't tell them who she was. They thought they were meeting with me. I had another client who made an appointment with me, and when they called back to confirm, she got the phone on a Monday, and they went in and met with her instead. But they told my boss. They ended up telling the higher-ups they were deceived by her and they were tricked by her. And that was not their intention to meet with her, that she tricked them into meeting with her. But the higher-ups decided that they would rather have somebody on the staff who was deceitful, unethical, dishonest, and a thief. And they came in, 4 or 5 corporate managers came down to the branch and met with me. And they said, "This is how it's going to be." Not only was she given a raise, she was also allowed commission on what I brought in, as well as 4 other branches. So she was basically made a supervisor of multiple branches. I called these people. I said, "Hey, all these branches, what do you think of this?" Nobody thought it was right. They all couldn't stand the thought of this happening. They thought it was terrible. And they actually wondered, who is she having an affair with? And that was a thought I had too. Who is she having an affair with? Because this doesn't make any logical sense in a company. One Saturday, I went into work and I was the only person in the entire building. When I got there, I saw bullet holes in the window in front of my desk. Straight ahead in front of my desk, there were bullet holes. I immediately called the manager and I explained to him that there are bullet holes in the window. And this is what he said. Oh, are you sure they weren't there before? I said, are you kidding me? This is a brand new building. You built it with bullet hole riddled windows? He said, I don't know if they were there or not. I said, they weren't here. He's like, well, the district manager's coming down and he'll know for sure. He's coming down on Monday. Ask him when he gets in. So that's what I did. The district manager came in on Monday and I showed him the bullet holes. He looked at the bullet holes and he had experience with this building as it was being built. He knew the layout of the building. He knew every building material product in the building. And he said, I don't know if they were there or not. I said, are you kidding me? What is this? Come on now. You don't know if the bullet hole was there or not? These are brand new windows. He said, actually, I don't know if they're brand new. That could have been there. I said, there's no way a company is going to make a brand new building with an office and put bullet hole riddled glass. Plus, I've been working here for like a month now and I've never seen the bullet hole there. And he says, well, I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it. Probably some kids. In addition, there was hair tangled in my phone cord. I have short hair. This was long hair. And I said, this isn't my hair, but nobody else has been here. I clean my desk every Tuesday I come in. Why would this hair be in my phone on a Saturday? That tells me she's been here. And he said, I don't know, and that you're being petty. Oh, I'm being petty. There's bullet holes in the window. There's evidence that she's been here since Monday, but I'm being petty. When I opened the drawer, that Friday, I knew exactly everything that was in my desk. There were black gloves in my desk. I had a suspicion that this woman was out to get me. She was no longer gunning for my clients. She was now gunning for my job. I had to take a step back from this because I'm like, the two that were fired and then hired, they absolutely adored this woman. They thought I was just making drama for no reason. She was there Monday. When I went into work on Tuesday, there were more bullet holes right by my desk, in the window right by my desk. In addition, that night when I left to get in my car, there was a strange truck in the parking lot, and I was the last one to leave. It was dark, and I was by myself. This was last November. I was by myself, and I didn't know who this strange truck was, but they were watching me as I got into my car. I locked my car doors, and I made a couple of phone calls. People said, see if they're following you. If they don't leave the parking lot, forget about it. But if they follow you, make a note. Drive right to the police station. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that. I didn't see them follow me or anything like that. But Wednesday came and I went to the manager and I said, hey, I should probably report these bullet holes to the police station. And he said, what would you do that for? I said, because they're bullet holes in my window by my desk. And he said, what are you insinuating? I'm not insinuating anything. There are bullet holes in the windows in your company's building that were never here before. It started Saturday with these bullet holes. Now it's today with these bullet holes. You don't see a problem with that? It's just kids. So that's your answer? It's just kids? You don't want the police involved? He refused to call the police and file a police report about the bullet holes in the windows. I no longer felt safe working there, and I made the decision that day to leave. The corporate employees had come back again, and I showed them the bullet holes. I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable working here anymore. May I go back to the branch I had come from? And they said yes. I'm still in touch with people that work at this company. And I understand this woman is still doing what she's doing. She's still thieving. She's still stealing from other employees. Several employees have actually left. Nobody can stand this woman. If you go online and look up her profiles in social media, she has a picture of somebody else claiming it's her. She also has a random profile on a old realtor website claiming that she's a $6 million realtor, but in fact, she's not a realtor. She also has many posts, like such as LinkedIn, Facebook, about her awards and about her contests that she's won from this company. But yet they're all forged. She stole them. She stole it all. The only reason she won anything was because she stole clients. When I went back to the first branch, I was there late by myself, and one of my friends happened to call who I hadn't talked to in a while. And she asked me what was going on, if I was still working at the job I was commuting to. And I explained to her, no, I'm back at the other branch. And I simply said, I don't know if I'll be here much longer. I'm probably going to leave. That's all I said. I didn't say anything bad about the company. I didn't say anything bad about this woman. And she said, I can get you a job in a heartbeat. You don't need to take that. I would get out of there as fast as possible. I said, well, I'm working on it. That was the whole conversation. Right after that, I hung up the phone. I went home to my family. The very next day, I got in early because I was backed up with work and I had to get a head start on it for the day. The manager brought someone else with him into my office and told me that I needed to stop talking about my experience with the other branch immediately because they were recording everything I said. I said, who's recording everything I say? What are you talking about? And he said, they're recording you. They're trying to build a case on you. I said, a case for what? He said, they don't want people here that stand up to them. I said, oh, like standing up to bullet holes in my window? They don't want people here that are ethical, that are real, genuine, not fake, not con people. They want, the delusional. They want the psychotic. They want people who try to shoot each other out of a job. That's what they want here. And he said, just stop talking. You were on a gag order. I said, record this. I quit. I found a different job that same day. So if you're ever faced with a job with this type of corporate mentality, and I understand it's out there. It wasn't just my company. It's getting worse and worse, especially when old school is pushed aside and you have inattentive management, inattentive owners that don't really give a crap. They just want the money. They don't really care what happens to the employees. They have no skin in the game. They just want the money. They just want the moolah. They don't care about their employees. If they got a psychotic, delusional employee running around shooting people, as long as they're making more for the company, they don't care. This is one example where the good guys don't win. If you are working for a company and you can afford to quit, I would say get out of there and do something else. I haven't looked back. So we're talking like almost a whole year. And I've never been happier. I was so burnt out. I was stressed out. I've even done videos about it. It's not worth it. Life is too short to waste your body, to waste your soul, to waste your time working for companies that are greedy and they don't give a hoot about the worker. Get out while you can. Get out while you can still live your life. I'm fortunate enough so that when I did quit, I had already had some things in the works. I had gone back to college and became a life coach. I had also had some other irons in the fire. That's what you need to do. Get yourself established. If you can't quit immediately, get yourself established and look forward. Instead of trying to make the company richer, make yourself richer. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much. Take care.